Most men have already started to disappear from the lives of those they love, and they haven't even realized it. This is the brutal reality of evolution. It doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like a quiet, unsettling withdrawal from everything you once called home. You walk into the same rooms, talk to the same people, but the air has become heavy with a silent power you didn't ask for, yet can no longer hide. The harsh truth is that your growth will always be registered as a threat by those who found your previous weakness convenient. They don't see your newfound clarity as a milestone. They see it as a shadow darkening the version of you they use to control. This is the male mindset at its most dangerous. The moment you stop seeking permission and start becoming a stranger to the people who claim to know you best. The person you were is dying, and the person arriving is someone they aren't prepared to meet.
The first shift into a refined male mindset rarely begins with a loud declaration of confidence. It starts with a quiet, persistent withdrawal of breath. You find yourself in a room you've occupied 100 times, perhaps during a casual dinner or a midday briefing, when a probing question is aimed at you. It is the kind of question designed not to uncover truth, but to map your boundaries, to locate you in a familiar box. In the past, you would have rushed to fill the air, offering context and justifications to ensure you were perceived exactly as you intended. But today, the brutal reality of human interaction becomes clear. You notice the exhaustion behind the performance. You realize that for years, your habit of over-explaining was never actually about clarity. It was a form of dark psychology you practiced on yourself, seeking the safety of being approved of. Something in you quietly decides to stop correcting the record. You offer a precise, 3-word answer where you once would have offered 30. You don't do it coldly. You do it with a stillness that is almost surgical. There is a visceral, specific discomfort that arrives when you allow someone to hold a flawed, incomplete version of you. It is a psychological itch, an involuntary urge to clarify, to plead for the listener to see your intent. You watch a coworker lean forward, waiting for the rest of your sentence. But the sentence has already ended. You observe them adjusting in their seat, a subtle shift in posture that betrays their sudden lack of footing. This is the silent power of the unsaid. By refusing to bridge the gap, you have inadvertently shifted the burden of understanding onto them. You are no longer performing your identity for their comfort. The harsh truth is that the need to be understood is almost always a disguised need for permission to exist as you are. Most people spend their lives handing out maps of their psyche to anyone who asks, hoping that if the other person knows the terrain, they won't attack. But in this silence, you recognize a deeper mechanism. Explanation is a form of submission. When you
How dare you defy us! This is treason! Come back here and face judgment, coward!
You say less, yet you mean significantly more. Consider the last time you were mid-sentence, defending a decision to someone who had already made up their mind about you. You likely felt the moment the words turned to ash in your mouth. You didn't stop because you ran out of vocabulary. You stopped because you realized the words were an offering they didn't deserve. That withdrawal was felt by everyone around you as a sudden absence of something that was previously on offer for free. They don't see it as your growth. They see it as a loss of their influence. Identity performance is a heavy mask to wear. We over-explain because we are terrified of the silence that follows an honest, unadorned
The
act.
Kingslayer returns.
Yet, the moment you stop filling
The
that
gods
silence
help
is the
us
moment
all.
you stop being a character in
He
a
looks
narrative
ready for
and
battle.
start becoming the author of your own. It was never about whether they understood you. It was about why you felt it was their right to try. The second shift in the architecture of the male mindset isn't an arrival of malice. It is a recalibration of time. You don't become a different person overnight. You simply become slower. You stop reacting at the speed that others have come to expect. And this, more than any dramatic outburst, is the first thing that unsettles the people around you. Most social systems are regulated by a predictable emotional rhythm. It is a hidden, unwritten contract. When someone laughs, you are expected to mirror them. When someone is tense, you are expected to soften the room. When someone provokes you, you are expected to answer. This rhythm is so deeply embedded that it functions as a social currency. But the brutal reality is that most of these reactions aren't yours. They are being spent by others on your behalf. The change begins in a mundane setting, perhaps family dinner or a routine office meeting. Someone makes a comment specifically designed to pull a reaction from you, a subtle jab or a probing piece of sarcasm. In the past, you would have provided the expected response instantly to maintain the peace. But now, you don't move at the speed the comment requires. You simply pause. The group registers the shift immediately. There is a sudden sharp vacuum where your reaction used to be.
The person who made the comment adjusts their position, perhaps clearing their throat or looking at their phone, haunted by a discomfort they cannot name. This is the silent power of the unhurried mind. By declining to react on schedule, you have effectively exited the social contract. However, the harsh truth that most avoid is that this restraint doesn't feel powerful while it's happening. It feels lonely. There is a specific cold quality to watching a conversation move around you rather than through you. You are standing in the same room, yet you have moved slightly outside of it. You notice a cinematic moment. You hold eye contact with a provocateur just a fraction of a second longer than usual. Not with aggression, but with a clinical, detached curiosity. They are the ones who look away first, and they will spend the rest of the evening wondering why that brief silence felt like a defeat. This is a core tenet of dark psychology. The most effective influence isn't the kind that acts, it's the kind that refuses to be acted upon. You begin to see that your previous reactivity was a form of regulation. Others were using your emotions to steady their own. By withholding that regulation, you become an unpredictable element. You realize with a quiet sense of dread that the people you once found most unnerving were never actually cold. They were simply the ones who refused to be regulated on someone else's schedule. You have changed the terms of your engagement with the world, and once the rhythm is broken, it can never truly be restored. You are no longer a participant in the performance. You are the one watching the play from the wings. If you're finding yourself in these words, it's because you've already begun to shift. Join this circle of observation. We explore the truths others are too afraid to name.
The quiet architecture of a refined male mindset eventually leads you to a corridor most prefer to keep dark. As you navigate the brutal reality of your own evolution, becoming more composed, more measured, and significantly less available, you find yourself sitting with a realization that has no comfortable name. It begins as a faint echo. You observe the way others now react to your silence.
The way they scramble to fill the gaps you've intentionally left open, and you recognize the pattern, not because you've studied it, but because you've lived it from the other side of the glass. There is a harsh truth waiting in the stillness of your own memory. You begin to look back at moments you once categorized as simple confidence or natural strength. Now, with the lens of dark psychology turned inward, those memories shift shape. You see a conversation from years ago, not a shouting match or a betrayal.
How
but a simple
dare you
exchange
defy
in a
us?
hallway
This
or a
is
quiet
treason.
room.
Come back
You
here and
remember
face
the exact
judgment,
moment
coward.
You withheld a nod of approval, not because it wasn't earned, but because you felt the subtle thrill of the other person reaching for it. In those moments, you weren't just being strong. You were regulating their access to your validation to create a specific kind of need. This recognition isn't an indictment. It is a clinical observation of human behavior.
You realize that long before you understood the term silent power,
The
you were
Kingslayer
already its practitioner.
returns.
You see yourself through
The
the
gods
eyes of
help
that
us
person
all.
from your past.
He looks
Someone
ready
who
for
left the
battle.
conversation feeling precisely as people now feel around you. Uncertain, slightly diminished, quietly disturbed. You hadn't planned it. It was a native predatory instinct for influence that you simply hadn't named yet. Most people engineer a sense of need in others to avoid the discomfort of being truly seen. By withholding the warmth that was expected, you didn't just protect yourself. You occupied a space in their mind that wasn't yours to take. It is a strange, unsettling sensation to realize that the person you are becoming is someone you have met before, years ago, in the form of someone who once made you feel small. The relationship felt like a partnership, but the silence was the mechanism. You find yourself standing at the edge of a deeper understanding, realizing that you didn't just learn these shifts, you remembered them. The reflection in the mirror hasn't changed, but the way you look at the eyes staring back has. You are no longer just a victim of the game, nor are you merely a student of its rules. You are beginning to understand that the most sophisticated form of influence is the kind you practiced when you thought you were just being yourself. This was never about learning a new language. It was about realizing you had been speaking it in your sleep. There is a specific, quiet discomfort that arrives when you stop participating in the mutual performance of reality. Most men spend their lives adhering to an unspoken social contract. I accept the version of yourself you are performing, and in return you accept mine. It is a predictable exchange of nods and mirrors. But the brutal reality of a maturing male mindset is that eventually the mirrors break. You find yourself sitting across from someone, perhaps a friend you've known for years, and as they speak, you realize you are no longer hearing their words. You are hearing the architecture behind the words. You aren't being harsh. You aren't being judgmental. You are simply seeing them clearly. This is the hidden mechanism of silent power. It isn't an act of aggression. It is an act of perception. Consider a common scenario. A long-term friend begins to complain about a mutual acquaintance, weaving a narrative that requires your validation to survive. In the past, you would have offered a supportive comment or a diplomatic redirection to keep the peace. Now, you say nothing. You don't offer a rebuttal, but you don't offer the expected confirmation either. You simply listen with a calm, neutral gaze. In that silence, the air in the room begins to thicken.
Your friend senses that their narrative is failing to land. They feel exposed, not because you've attacked them, but because you've stopped performing the role of their audience. They will later describe you as having changed, or perhaps call you cold. The harsh truth is that they aren't unsettled by who you've become. They are unsettled by what you've stopped doing. There is a particular sensation to reading a message.
Perhaps a text from someone asking for a favor disguised as a compliment and looking at it twice, not because the text was confusing, but because for the first time you see the gap between the warmth of the words and the coldness of the intent. You realize in that second reading that the obligation to pretend the two match has simply evaporated. You don't feel the need to reply with the usual enthusiasm. You might not feel the need to reply at all.
This is the brutal reality of clarity. It is a social disruptor. Most people don't actually want to be understood. They want to be agreed with. When you withdraw that agreement, you introduce a specific kind of solitude into your life. It is the solitude of the observer. You may have assumed that seeing the world more clearly would make you feel more connected to it. Instead, it makes you distinct. You are standing in the same room, but you are no longer part of the furniture. The unrecognizability is mutual. You no longer recognize the person you used to be, the one who was so eager to confirm the illusions of others, and they no longer recognize the person you are becoming. Presence is not a loud display of authority. It is the quiet refusal to participate in the lie. The most magnetic people you've ever met were likely not the loudest or the most confident.
How
They
dare
were the
you
ones who
defy
sat in the
us?
silence and
This
didn't feel the
is
need to
treason.
fix it for you.
Come back here
They were the
and
ones who
face
looked at you and
judgment,
saw
coward.
exactly what was there and made no effort to pretend otherwise. You are beginning to understand the cost of that clarity. It is the weight of being the only one in the room who has stopped performing. The final realization within the architecture of a refined male mindset is the one most narrators are too afraid to name.
You are more composed, your speech is more precise, and your time is no longer a currency you hand out for free. You have achieved the silent power you once sought. Yet, as you stand in the center of this newfound strength, you notice a specific, echoing silence in the relationships that once defined you.
returns.
You have outgrown the version
gods
of
help us
yourself
all.
that others were comfortable
He looks ready
with,
for battle.
and that growth has come at a price. The brutal reality is that social disruption isn't a side effect of personal evolution. It is the invoice.
Imagine a family gathering, a setting thick with history and unwritten rules. You are quieter now, your presence marked by a calm restraint, rather than the restless need to entertain or explain. A relative looks at you, their eyes filled with genuine affection, and says, "You've changed." The room settles into a heavy, unspoken agreement. In that moment, you sense the harsh truth. This is not a compliment. They aren't celebrating your growth. They are mourning the person who used to be legible to them. They preferred the version of you that was more available. The one who was willing to occupy the predictable role they had assigned to you years ago. The temptation to revert to that older, louder, less composed version of yourself is not an act of weakness. It is a reach for intimacy. There is a profound internal conflict in realizing that your old self, the one that lacked silent power, was much easier to love. That version of you was a home. For people, your current clarity and emotional discipline have introduced a distance that no one asked for, and few can cross. You find yourself at a table with an old friend, sharing a conversation that remains warm on the surface, but underneath, you both sense a new gap. The friend reaches for a joke that would have landed 2 years ago, a familiar bit of banter that used to bridge the space between you. You smile, but you both feel the distance in that smile. The joke didn't fail because it wasn't funny. It failed because the person it was intended for no longer exists. This is the inversion of power that no one mentions. It does not make you universally magnetic. It makes you selective. Becoming powerful does not draw everyone closer. It acts as a filter. The people who quietly drift away are not always the shallow ones or the haters described in motivational cliches. Often they are the people for whom your old messy self was. It is the grief of the loss. You have given up something real, held by people who mattered, in order to become something that can finally stand on its own. Growth is a heavy path, but you don't have to walk it without clarity. Subscribe to remain awake in a world that prefers you asleep. The brutal reality of your transformation is that it doesn't end with a trophy or a throne. It ends in a quiet room, late, where the air is finally settled but nothing feels concluded. You stand at the edge of a new architecture, possessing the silent power you once craved. Yet the triumph feels unexpectedly still. You look at an unopened message on your phone, or the empty seat across a table, and you realize you have become slightly unrecognizable. Not just to the people you left behind, but to the person you assumed you were becoming. There is a harsh truth in this isolation. You are forced to wonder if the man you were, the one who reacted too fast and explained too much, was less real, or simply more available. Growth is rarely a clean movement toward truth. It is often just a departure. You are here now, but at what cost? Most will watch this and forget. The few who understand will stay, choose to be among those who see.